Welcome to Women in Leadership Talk, where you'll hear from successful women who are empowering other women with their stories of adversity, resiliency, and success. And here is your host, Vicki Bradley, founder and CEO of Women in Leadership Empowered.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Women in Leadership Talk podcast. Thank you so much for being here today. And we have a lovely guest joining us from Clearwater, Florida, Jenna Capozzi. Jenna, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited about this one.
Well, we're thrilled to have you and excited that you're joining us from the South. I'm a little jealous because it's a little cold where I'm at and a little bit snowy, and I'd much rather have sunshine.
It's cold here for us. It's like 38 degrees, you know.
Oh, that is cold. Wow. Okay.
A little bit as Floridians because it's mostly hot and humid. So
yeah.
But the snowbirds don't like it so much.
No, because we leave this to come to Florida to experience warmth and, thaw our bones out. But it gives you a chance to wear some sweaters and change your fashion attire, right? So that's kind of cool.
Exactly. Yep.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being here today. And audience, thank you for being here. We know you have a choice as to who you listen to. So we're super grateful that you're chiming in with us again today to have a listen to our conversation with Jenna. So let me give you a little bit of background about Jenna, and then we're going to jump right into a conversation and dig a little deeper into figuring out who she is. So Jenna Capozzi is the founder of Elevate Power. She brings over 30 years of C-level executive experience, having led innovative projects for global brands such as Samsung, Target, BMW, and has produced notable films and TV shows. And I know all of you have heard of those brands. They're, global brands. She's transitioning from the spotlight of Hollywood to empowering the next generation of leaders. She leverages her extensive background to guide individuals towards impactful leadership. And she dedicates herself to mentoring individuals, emphasizing the importance of community support and personal growth. So, Jenna, I don't want to tell everybody your bio because I want us to just jump in and talk about who you actually are.
Yeah, better than the written one. Yes, I understand.
Awesome. So, let's kind of start there. So you've had a vast career. You've spent lots of time in, high-level executive roles, probably a little bit on the male-dominated side if you were in Hollywood. So maybe just talk to us a little bit about, what led you there, and then how have you transitioned into what you're doing today?
Yeah. When I was younger, my father unfortunately passed when I was 2 years old. And so my mom was a single mom of two girls, no college degree, and had to figure out what to do next. And her sister married a very famous jazz singer. And so my mom said, I don't know what to do. And she said, come with us on the road. And my mom managed my uncle, and my life began on the road with artists. And I was around incredible artists like Miles Davis, Dizzy Gillespie, Sarah Vaughan. I was 3 years old, not knowing anything, but I was the cute little curly-haired girl. But my uncle on Friday nights would bring me up on stage for the finale, right? I was a cute little girl. I tap danced. But what I would see when I would look out to the audience was a group of people who were elated and were happy. And I remembered as a young child, I think at this point I was about 4.5, 5. I said, I want to do that. I want to create that effect on people. My uncle was, I just adored him. He was the ultimate creator, very calm in life, very artistic. Anytime he opened his mouth, something funny came out. Like, he just entertained and uplifted others.
Nice.
And that became the beginning of, I'm going to be a performer. And then as I sort of went through life hits you in different ways and different opportunities. I came out of high school saying, actually, I think I'm going to be a director. And I started to go down that path. That wasn't really self-chosen, to be quite honest with you. I was very excited my first day of college with my acting teacher, who said, you do a monologue. I did a monologue, and he said, oh, no, you have no talent, but you look like a leader. So why don't you go be a director? And I said, okay. And that's how it started. And I ended up getting the NYU Film School for direction. But I sort of had this secret, like, great, I'll direct a film and just put myself in it,
Ah, okay.
So it
The
literally
ultimate plan.
yes, yes. But it was that beginning. I did not have a traditional family. I grew up in a legit tree house. My mom was the ultimate hippie. And in my family, it was if you dare think you are going to go to college and have a 4-year degree and become a lawyer or doctor, you are no longer accepted in this family. In this family, we're
Okay.
artists. So I had a bit of that opposite, yet kind of the
Mm,
same sort of push. So it was always out of the box. It was always think differently, which really has lent itself to me being an entrepreneur, in all
okay.
honesty.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'd like to tap in a little bit to what this professor said to you,
Yeah.
because we hear that
Yeah.
often in life,
Yeah.
whether it's somebody saying it to us consciously or unconsciously.
Sure.
It's that story of you're not good enough,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So what happened? Like what when that professor said to you, "Oh, you just don't quite have this, but maybe you could
Yeah.
go over and do this." What
Yeah.
was the emotional connection to that?
Well, I think the real obvious answer and really the truthful answer is that I lacked self confidence. Because if I had my
Okay.
self confidence in, or I knew what I wanted to do, be like, screw you, man. I'm going to go learn from someone else,
Yeah.
which is probably what I should have done. But, at the time, I wasn't too stable. I had sort of dove into the world of drugs. I was sort of like,
Mm,
felt like I was hiding because on the outside, everything looked fantastic on paper.
mm.
I played on the US soccer team. When I was 16 years old, I toured all through Europe playing soccer. I did a Peace Corps when I was 17 and spent 3 months in Mexico. I was popular.
Wow.
I had friends, like everything on paper, but I sort of had this other side to me where I was self-destructive. And so that just blows your self-confidence out the
Mm.
window.
Yeah.
So here I come. I probably was very nervous. I probably couldn't look him in the eye. I was probably I kind of remember being scared to death. It was a long time ago. And so when he just sort of gave me that, it was my escape. But if I
Mm.
had the self-confidence, you know, and not doing all those self-destructive things, then it probably would have been a different story.
Mm.
But
Mm.
fine. I did
Yeah.
find that later in life when I was about 30 and I really dove into my own spirituality and kind of checking things out. I went back to performing because I
Okay.
performed like when I was younger, I performed a ton. I danced a ton. Obviously, with my connections in the industry, I got in front of some really great audiences. But I did revisit it back when I was 30 and the self confidence was there. But I was like, this is way too slow. I do not want to be an actor. I'm going to go into producing, because I'd done it all through my 20s. I was like, way faster, make a lot more, money and be more in control of my life. So that's what I did. So I married an actor and, there he
Oh,
had
there
it.
you go. You kept it in the family. Well, I love though how you pivoted, right?
Yeah.
And so, and the reason I wanted to go back to that is
Yeah.
because that does happen a lot, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Life
all of
happens.
us, men, women, what it doesn't matter, right? Like we all have that not enough story, whatever that enough is. It could be money, looks, health, whatever. Like there's always a story. But what I hear you say is you took the opportunity and so you refocused and you became a director, then you became a producer. And so you're just because maybe the acting wasn't the thing at the moment,
Mm-hmm.
you still stayed in that industry and found a way to fulfill your passions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's, honestly, I just gave a speech yesterday to a bunch of parents, right, in leadership and things. And, I really honed in on this one point, and I find this to be absolutely true. You don't have it all figured out. You don't have it all mapped out, and you don't have it all planned out. But when you are okay with that, and you know that you can make a decision and you can just change the decision if it's not going down the right road, you're going to be just fine.
Yeah.
I think it's when we get locked into this false idea that we have to just do this one thing that I said I was going to do. And I think that's the point you're bringing up is like, it's okay that, hey man, I'm going to take the right turn and I might realize I don't like the right turn so much. I'm going to
Yeah.
take a left turn. Now that is different than change, not completing something, which we all know there's that as well. It's a bit of a manic sort of like start thing. It's not that. It's just let me explore, let me observe, let me look. Is this moving in the right direction? Get me the best bang for the buck. It's not great. Let me go a little bit to the left and avoid that obstacle because
Yeah,
life is made of obstacles.
for
And I
sure.
think you're living on a different planet if you think it's not. And you got to welcome the obstacles, you know?
Well, and obstacles can create opportunity, which is what I'm hearing,
Right.
right?
Right.
And yes, you're absolutely right. That is where I was going, because often, we do get set thinking the expectation from, maybe it's somebody else, our parents, right? Like, even when you said, your mom was like, if you're a doctor or a lawyer, forget it. We're creative people here in this family.
Right.
So that's all great and fine if that's what you want,
Yeah.
but it's also being open to say, oh, you know what, this is not really making me as happy as I thought it would. It all looked and sounded good. And I think that's very true. And what we're going to jump into this in a minute when you talk about this next generation of leaders, because our young people go off to university, and on average, they're 18, 19 years old. They don't know what the heck they want to do. Right. And there's so many different possibilities today than, when I grew up, like, you were a teacher, you were right. There was like specific things that women were supposed to do.
Yeah.
But they have so many options. And so it's a bit overwhelming. And so we think, oh my God, I have to pick one thing and just do that. And that's not reality.
Yeah.
That's not how you evolve, even as a human being.
Yeah, true. And I think we ask the wrong question of the younger generation. I think we ask, what do you want to do? What do you want to be? And that's a little hard. I think the question should be, what do you want to have?
Mm.
So you start looking at, what is that lifestyle you want to create? What life do you want to design? Because nowadays with the technology, you can be anywhere, you can create anything, you can get an app that makes you money, you can get attention that makes money. You don't have to go to college.
Yeah.
That's the reality. And so, I have a 16, almost 17-year-old, and we're having those conversations. What do you want to have? And he looks at me like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, I don't just mean materialistic, but what do you want to have? I call it the get. Like, we want to
Mm.
have freedom to be wherever we want to be geographically. We want to have the
Mhm.
freedom to be wherever we want to be economically. We want the freedom of time, right? Those are the things that it looks like, or at least what I'm seeing on social media, that everyone is striving for. So I'm
Right.
like, let's design it. What does that look like? What do you want to have? And it was interesting to just watch my son even start to get a little more like confidence on, wow, I can
Mm.
kind of design what I want to have and not feel like the constraints of middle class. And
Mm.
honestly, I think that's what my mom was trying to blow against, was like, I don't want you to feel locked into a middle class culture.
Mhm.
Not to say that it has to be bad, because middle class isn't financial. It's really just a culture that if anyone is out of the box, people get a little upset about that. I think
Right. Right. Yeah.
more in a time. So I think that's the question asked. What do you want to have? Then when you know what you want to have, okay, well, what do you need to be in order to have that?
Yeah.
You know, do you need to be disciplined? Do you need to be energetic? Do you need to, have fun? Do you need,
Mhm.
whatever that is? Now, okay, great. Now, what are you going to do to do that?
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
think when we ask the do, they're stuck in a do. And that's where I see people on a hamster wheel, as we call it. They're just doing, 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 and not looking up and going, what's that future I want to imagine? How do I want to
Well,
design that?
that's a great point. And I've shared this, I think, before on the podcast, but I remember having a conversation with a lady one time, and she was leaving her current role. And I said, okay, so, you know, white slate.
Yeah, right.
What do you want to do? And she went really quiet, and I thought the phone disconnected. And I was like waiting for a second, and I was like, are you okay? And she goes, honestly, she goes, I've never thought about it. And so to validate your point,
Yeah,
right?
right.
And I was like, oh, and she goes, that sounds awful. I've never really thought about it. She said, but I've never had to, because the opportunities were always there. And so I just fell into the next opportunity.
Yeah,
And I said, okay, so that opportunity is not there. You've made a decision to leave where you are without having an opportunity. And it was her choice to
yeah,
leave.
yeah,
And I said, what would you do if you could?
yeah,
What would really make you excited? What
yeah,
would fill your tank? And so we went through this whole conversation about, oh, if I wasn't working, here are the things that I would do. So it's like, okay, take from that. How
yeah,
could you incorporate that into a career possibly?
yeah.
Right? So you're right. Like, it is about what you want, lifestyle wise, and what are those passions? What are the things that get you excited to get up in the morning and start to do?
And I think for women especially, we're in this reinvention stage, and I didn't realize that retiring at 51 meant I was in the reinvention stage, and now every podcast asks me about it. But to that point, there are a lot of have tos as women. If you're a mother, if you're a wife, working
Daughter.
mom, daughter, there's a lot of have tos. You know what I mean? And you could argue that everyone has a lot of have tos. I get it, but I definitely have. I lead. I coach women. I mentor women, so I'm more in their world, right? And I see with women that they're shedding that I have to, and they're struggling with sort of giving themselves the freedom and the space to design that life.
Yeah.
Right. Like I'm about to go on a retreat on Wednesday with 10 women, and that's all we're doing is planning our 2025. And they're like, wait, what are we doing? I said, literally, it's harder than you think to sit there and have the patience to look at the year and plan the enjoyable things, the work milestones, and all the things that you want to get done. Because we as women usually start to look and go, okay, let me make my to-do list. Let me make my battle plan. Let me start getting into action instead of like, oh, hold on. Let's have that executive view, that high 30-foot look, and just, go for it.
Yeah. Oh, it's so true. It is way harder than you think, because you have so many competing priorities too, especially if you have kids or you're caring for elderly parents or demanding partner or whatever. I mean, we can have a million excuses, but this is your time, right? So okay, so let's pop into moving from Hollywood to empowering leaders. So you kind of went there. So you're working with women, you're really helping them, but why was that the right thing for you after, producing and directing?
So I was 51, and we had just moved to Florida, and I had, a great client, very lucrative, great money. And I'm sitting at a red light, which the red lights in Florida are awful. They're like literally
They
4
take
minute
forever.
lights, lights. They take forever. So you have a lot of time to think about your life. In fact, I just started making my Instagram videos. I started this whole red light diaries. I'm like, I'm not going to waste any money.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
But I'm sitting there and I'm like at the light. I just remember I just put my hand in my head and I was just so bored. I'm like, I'm so bored. But really what struck me is I was like looking around and I'm like, this is not good. Like planet Earth's not great. Like it's just not. Like it could be doing a lot better. We have created with social media, unfortunately, this division, especially in our country. I'm sure everywhere, really. It's become this broadcasting tool to get people to fight, and not everybody, but obviously it has that negative approach. I'm an older mom. I had my daughter at 45, right? She was 6 at the time, and my son was 15 or 14, and I was sort of like, not feeling really good about my contributions right now. Like, what am I doing? And I thought, okay, great. Like I have good friends who do this for a living, Grant and Elena Cardone. I've known them for 23 years, and they're out there putting themselves out there, and they're helping a broad scope of people, right? And I was like, well, I could do that. I could. I like to perform, might handle that performance thing. I could get up there and speak. And I was like, I wouldn't make a difference fast enough. So who can I help? And I was like, the women in my life have always been there for me and have gone the extra mile. Now, I love my husband. He's a gorgeous man, lovely. But I will say, between my best friend, my mom, my sister, and other women in my life, it's been just that little extra step. I think we have it naturally as mothers, just sort of that nurture. And I was like, I think women are great leaders because there's a care factor. And I thought, I wonder if I could mentor and help women build an audience so they have a broader group to speak to. Because if I have a bunch of leaders with sane messages globally around, we're going to get the job done faster. And maybe we can move faster against the negative messages on social media and override them with more sane messages on social media. And honestly, it's good marketing. What's the closest fruit to me? What do I understand the best? It's going to be women 45 plus who are sort of at that point in their life. Kids are growing. I don't want to be in the corporate job anymore, or I do want to get a job now. And how do I break back in? And how do I help others? Because inevitably, we all really want to help others.
That's so true. At the core, that's what it comes down to.
Right? Whenever I'm working with someone and we're trying to help them find their goals and their purpose, and we uncover every single one of them at the base.
Every time.
Help someone else with something. Absolutely. And help is the most sort of destroyed thing that we have on this planet. If you think about it, you help someone gets mad at you, or you help someone and you're giving them a drug to help them, or you're putting them in an insane asylum to help them, or whatever it is. It's not true help, like we really just got to like kind of maybe just listening is just all that's needed,
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
anyways,
great point.
that sort of became the impetus of it. And I went into my client, and literally 2 days later, he said, "I don't need your services anymore." And I said, "Well, if that's not a sign, then that is a sign." And I literally just started and just created it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That is a big sign.
That is a big sign. That's how it's always kind of worked in my life. Those opportunities
Okay.
kind of open up. Yeah.
Well, but it takes a person to be open to opportunity, to see
Yep.
it, right? And
Right.
so, you mentioned that going into college or
Yeah.
university, that professor made that comment, and
Yep.
for some people that would have been devastating, but you went, "Okay, well, maybe I can try this and see if that's the right avenue for me." And
Yeah.
it sounds like you've done that again. So, let's talk about that transition when
Mhm.
you move, because this is something I hear a lot from women, because you're right, there's a lot of women who want to leave corporate for lots of different reasons.
Sure.
Entrepreneurial world is scary,
Yep.
because it's now you,
Yeah.
right?
Love it. Yep.
So maybe let's talk a little bit about that transition and what you felt like were the maybe biggest hurdles, but
Mhm.
also the biggest rewards for making that move.
I get asked this question a lot, and it's I've been in the movie industry. So ever since I've been 19. So you are an entrepreneur in the movie industry. No one has a job. You're as good as your last gig. And you have to go gig to gig to gig to gig to gig. So that muscle of always having to hustle and always trying to find the next thing and the next opportunity has
Mm.
been absolutely grooved in for 30 years. So somebody said to me when I was telling them what I was doing, they said, "Oh, aren't you scared?" And I said, "No." And they said, "Why not?" I said, "Well, first of all, let's keep in mind that I did launch my own company in 2005 and had it for 17 years. And it was like multi seven figures and very successful. COVID shut that down because I couldn't film on set anymore.
Mm.
But then I was picked up by Sony, and then I was picked up at an ad agency. So no, I'm actually excited because I've made all the mistakes. But my mindset, I didn't run into that like other women run into it, because I
Mm.
didn't have the stability of being the effect of a corporate job and a boss or telling me, it was just, I always had to create it for myself. So I
Right.
think if anything, it was my wake up, because that client I had for 3 years, and it was like a nice $30,000 a month paycheck just coming in,
Mm.
just $30,000, blah, blah, blah. And it was like, ooh, I'm down to like zero money in my account. Yes, let's get excited. How am I going to come up with a bright idea? And it was like, next thing you know, I'm doing a webinar. I've never done a webinar, $9,000 that day. You know what I mean? I
Mm.
just started. So I think for me, I can't answer that honestly, except that I know that my successful action is to just put my attention on the next thing I'm creating and not the thing I'm losing out on. And that, I
Mm.
would say, has always been that successful tool in anything. I lost my dad when I was younger. Okay, well, I have another parent. Like, okay, I have my uncle to lean on.
Mhm.
All right, you know, the first upset with a boyfriend, or, losing that soccer match. It was like, okay, well, what did I do well? What didn't I do well? I've always just sort of naturally had that mindset.
Mm.
So I think
That's
that has
great.
been my survival tool.
Yeah, that's great. And so, just from an audience
Sure.
perspective, mindset is everything. I
Yep.
mean, you can get up and decide it's going to be a rotten, crappy day, or you can get up and decide today's going to be the most spectacular day of my life, right?
Yeah.
And it does start with that. And
Yeah.
so, to your point, it's recognizing the good.
Yeah.
It was a couple of weeks ago. I was in the car with, I have adult children,
Yeah.
and we were in the car. And we were talking about something, and my son was moaning and groaning,
Yeah.
and I was like, I was listening for a little bit, and then I was like, okay, can you tell me something good that actually happened? And it was like dead silence in the car,
Yeah.
because we are wired
Yeah.
for, we don't have negative whatever, right? We always tend to go to the negative side.
Yeah.
And it took him a few minutes, but then he found something, right?
Yeah.
And it completely changed the feeling even in
Yeah.
the car, because the conversation then became
That's
more
right.
about what is working,
That's
right?
right.
And that's what I'm hearing you say, is
Yeah.
that you've built that muscle for
Yeah.
40 years,
Yeah.
basically,
Yeah.
on, or however many, right? Like
Sure.
35 years on, finding, okay, well, that didn't work. So how do
Yeah.
I pivot? How do I grow from this? What do I learn? How do I take that then to the next level?
Yeah, I mean, and it's not like it's perfect all the time. There's a video that's cruising around right now from Shonda Rhimes. She's the one who wrote Grey's Anatomy and
Mhm.
Scandal, and she has like Shondaland, and she's giving a lecture at a college, right, for the graduates. And she said something, as a single mom, a successful, Hollywood writer, producer. She just said it's not perfect all the time. She's like, if I'm there signing the deal of a lifetime with the TV show, I'm missing out on my kids' bath time. If I'm like doing bath time, I'm missing out on like getting some sort of actor to be part of the show. Like it is that juggle. But I would say I'm pretty good, maybe 85% of the time of something will come in, it's a problem, to sort of take it apart and go, great, okay, that really sucks, because I think you have to accept that too. That's not great.
Mhm.
Good, get rid of that. Awesome. What are the pieces I can take with it?
Yeah.
And that is, I think, really an executive viewpoint and a leader viewpoint, because what does a
Mhm.
leader do really? We just inspire others to be the best version of themselves,
Yeah.
and you have to lead through that example yourself. So
Yeah.
there is a lot of, and look, man, I've done a lot of personal growth. I've definitely worked on myself. You know what I mean? For sure. But it is, dealing with a 16-year-old. It's like I say to him, I said, I want you to just treat every day like as if it's the best day ever. And he looked at me a little crazy and he said, okay, you know,
Sure, mom.
sure, mom. And my husband said something really brilliant to me the other day. He was complaining about, a class he was doing or whatever. My husband's like, why don't you just get the view of your teacher? Like, what if you just decide to be the best student? Like, how would that help your teacher
Mm.
out? Because then your teacher could be really proud of the class that she has. Like, how would that help her? Because he really likes his teacher. And he was like, oh, okay. And
Oh,
just,
that's brilliant. I love
right?
that.
I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, hubby, that was a good one." And but it's true. It's like, how is your behavior? It might feel like it's all your problem, but how is that really affecting others? Like
Yeah.
sometimes it's easier to go help someone else than yourself.
Oh,
So
most of the time. Right? Because we're all confident with somebody else, and sometimes we doubt whether we can, succeed at that, or who
never.
wants to hear me, or whatever the stories are that we tell ourselves. That's actually a really brilliant. And also, what I love about what he said is it takes you out of yourself,
Yes.
right? To look at, it's much bigger than you.
Yeah.
which oftentimes, and that says a lot about your husband, actually, because
Yeah.
so many men, and I'm not stereotyping, but a lot of men, it is very much about
Yeah.
themselves. And
Yeah.
then, you know, women are very much about everybody else, and ourselves are last. And
Yeah.
so that's a beautiful way that he modeled for your son, how to
Yeah.
step back and look at things more holistically, and how does your behavior impact others?
Yeah. He's had sort of that his own self-realization on that recently.
Yeah.
And it is truly key. And I think, especially kids these days, but all of us truly, I mean, we're like, you're like this,
Uh-huh.
and so, you got to get out and go, oh, geez, how am I affecting that person?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I actually give that advice to women a lot who, oh, I don't want to do social media. Oh, I don't want to get on the camera. And if you go to my Instagram and you look at it, like I don't have makeup on all the time. Now, I'm not saying everyone has to run around looking ugly, but my communication was more senior at that moment in time than making sure that my makeup was. And so I
Right.
had a woman ask me, she's like, how do you do that? How do you get by that? Like, are you just that self-confident? I'm like, hell no. I'm like, I look at it and go, oh, look at those wrinkles. What did I do? But what gets me through is the person on the other side of the camera, the
Yeah.
person I'm helping. When I put my attention there,
Yeah.
and it completely comes off me looking at like, oh, my big nose, my big Italian nose, and the wrinkles, whatever it is that no one else sees, but I see. When I put it on the other person, I'm helping them. And I remember this one woman I was coaching, she was like, that was like literally the best advice because I just got it
Mhm.
off me, I thought that
Nice.
was really cool. Yeah.
Nice. I love that. Well, and so that was actually going to be one of my questions. So when you think about showing up, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's social media or whatever, like, let's talk about that a little bit,
Yeah.
because, often women in general will shy away from that. right? They don't want to
Absolutely.
be on social media. They'll be on it to scroll and look,
Yeah.
but they
That is
don't
so true.
necessarily engage, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or even networking, right? Like I spend a lot of time coaching people on building your network. And
Yeah.
building your network is not like, going out and, being cheesy trying to sell your business.
Yeah.
No, building your network is building a connection or a support
Yeah.
system around you. But I'd love
Yeah.
to hear your thoughts, Jenna, on,
Yeah.
especially coming from, the TV industry and directing,
Yeah.
producing. Like, let's talk about like what platforms are you on and
Yeah.
how are you showing up?
Yeah. Great. I'm mostly on Instagram.
Okay.
There's a lot of women on Instagram. I'm mostly there, which does connect to my Facebook. I'm not great at social. I'm not great. I
Okay.
am on social a lot, but I don't have a huge following on social.
Okay.
I literally just did my first year in this new business. And so in order to grow a business rather quickly, which is what I did, you have to work with strategic partnerships. So I was getting
Mm,
on other people's stages, doing podcasts, making connections, creating events, doing retreats so that I can increase my audience very
mm.
quickly, right? And
Makes
get the
sense.
income in.
Yep.
This year is all about pushing the social. I have a new partner who's like the best at it. And we're creating a massive content studio here in Clearwater where people and influencers can come in and create their content and get it on the airwaves and all that. But the way I show up is, I would say, consistency and
Mhm.
just what is truthful to me,
Nice.
you know? And my partner has me do trending audios and doing things as such that could feel kind of cringy at times, but nothing that feels out integrity. And
Okay.
I just asked her, why am I like, break this down for me? She's like, this is how the algorithm works. It likes people to be
Ah,
on the platform. It likes popularity. So when you're doing a trending audio, not one that's, vulgar or stupid or whatever, it's trending. Everyone's doing it. It starts giving you more attention. And I noticed that all of a sudden my content is being seen 80% non-followers. So I'm been
okay.
getting new followers every day just by doing some of these fun, playful, silly things that grab attention, or the repeat boomerang, or things like that. You know, I also do authoritarian content,
Okay.
like what Elena Cardone does or Cody Sanchez does or Mel Robbins, but that is very consistent. And what Gary Vee says, which I absolutely agree, just based off my background in TV, is like, just own the airwaves. Like,
Yeah.
you have to be on 4 or 5 hours a day,
Yeah.
because the minute you watch it, I mean, everyone forgets what they saw in their stories this morning. It
Yeah.
might have been something you forwarded to someone. I have a client right now who's like a very famous actor who's trying to get more into social. And he just left me a message this morning going, hey, can you help me? Like, I want to make sure I'm really thinking of the sequence. I said, no one cares.
Yeah.
No one's going to remember. He's like,
Yeah.
yeah, but I said, okay, they might remember you a little bit more. But the truth is like, it's just, you have to keep communicating and keep communicating. That's
That's a
really,
great that's a great point. And
yeah,
especially for so not everybody is going to want to be on social media and
yeah,
and using it in that way. But I would say that's true even when you're networking, right? Like when you're
right.
building connections, it's that consistency of reaching out and following up and it doesn't mean you have to do it every week, nothing like that. But every periodically, like reach out. Hey Jenna, how you doing? Like what's new in your world? How's your business thriving? How was that retreat you just did? Like, following up with people and lives are busy. We all get it, right? But if you are trying to create a brand, which is what
Yeah,
you're doing,
yeah.
it is important to show up and show up fully as to who you are.
Yeah, and I think you got to check yourself. If you're being critical of somebody else, even
Yeah.
to yourself, oh, I don't like that video. I don't like this. You are literally putting up barriers for yourself to not communicate.
Great point.
So
Yeah.
here's the thing, communicate. There's nothing that can go wrong if you're communicating. It actually can just go right. It might get a little uncomfortable, but if you keep communicating at it, like Vicki, if you and I were if we weren't getting along, right? And there was something that we disagreed about, and we just kind of kept talking about it and had a willingness to get someone else's viewpoint. I don't
Yeah.
even have to agree with your viewpoint. We're going to be much better off than me being critical and just stopping the communication with
That's
you.
right. 100%.
And I think that's the same thing when you're networking. Yeah, I mean, even I get nervous when I go into a conference thing, and even though I love to communicate, I just push myself. It's like almost like push myself a little bit. But what I do is I just find out about the other person, and it's so easy. I mean, the hardest question on a podcast is tell us about yourself. It's like, oh no, you know, I get
What do people want to know?
yeah. But you just start communicating, and I think the thing is that when you're truly interested in other people,
Yeah.
like truly interested in other people, it's really easy to network. I had 3 meetings last week. I met with every single one of them. And after an hour and a half, the other woman said, oh my gosh, I just talked about myself the whole time. I'm like, yeah, totally fine. Totally fine with me.
Yeah.
I learned everything I need to learn about her and how we could work together and what was going to happen. That's on her that she didn't ask me any questions. I don't care. I
Exactly.
got what I needed,
Yeah.
so it was easy,
Yeah. Nice. Nice. I
Interesting.
love that. Well, that's a good way to kind of wrap us up for our conversation today. I love that. And I appreciate so much, Jenna, your vulnerability and just, being so candid about the transitions and looking at opportunities. Like, and that's what I would, leave with our audience. Like, really think about how often are you shutting down possibilities or opportunities. And so, Jenna, what would you like to say as we wrap up today? What would you like our audience to walk away with, or maybe one thing they could do to have a different impact?
Yeah. So I have a saying, which is don't think, just do. Because when we think, we literally think ourselves out of bright ideas.
Mm.
And when you go after those bright ideas, the ones that kind of get you out of bed in the morning, and you just go after it and don't talk yourself out of it, you're really living life, and you're living the life that you design. So don't
Nice.
think, just do.
Just do. Okay. Awesome. And so I know you mentioned Instagram. Is it under Elevate Power, or is it under Jenna Capozzi?
Yeah, Jenna Capozzi, I think brands should be people. So I lead with that, especially if you're in
Nice.
the coaching space. But honestly, for your listeners, because no one can spell Capozzi, I created something called Lead with Jenna, and it will give them a free download. It's like 10 or 12 pages on really how to start establishing your brand, stating
Nice.
your goals, your purpose, your mission statement. And then on there, if they want to set up a call with me or any of my coaches for a free 30 minutes, we can just dive in. They can absolutely do that. But that's the best way to stay connected is Lead with Jenna.
Nice. Nice. Love it. Love it. Love it. Thank you so, so much for being here today. This was a great conversation and enjoyed learning about, your transition and how you, have moved from Hollywood to, becoming this rock star coach and helping lead others.
Yeah.
And audience, thank you. We are so grateful for you to be here. And listen, if this episode resonates with you, please do share it. If you've got a friend who's trying to figure out, how do I put myself out there? This is a great podcast for them to listen to. So I want to thank everybody for being here. And if you're interested in how you're showing up as a leader, go on to the WIL Empowered website. That's 1L, WIL Empowered, and take our free leadership quiz. It'll give you a lot of great insight as to how you're showing up in the world. So thanks, everybody. And we'll see you on the next Women in Leadership Talk podcast. Take care, everyone. Thank you for joining us for WIL Talk, sponsored by Women in Leadership Empowered. To learn more about our programs, please visit www.willempowered.com. We look forward to seeing you in our community.